faculty and students. For example, we have a fantastic collection of over 103,000 children's books dating from the 1600s through the present time. And I brought a couple of examples, so I hope at the end of the session you'll come up and take a look at them. One of the sub-collections within the Baldwin's children's literature collection is our pop-up books. And I brought two that are Alice in Wonderland books, one from the 1980s and the other that's more current. And they're absolutely amazing in the engineering of them and what they do. They're really works of art. Last year, the library sponsored a workshop with one of the engineers who designs these pop-up books to share the secrets of designing them. But it's a wonderful collection, and there's a whole wide range of things. But I think the pop-up books are a particularly interesting segment of the collection. In addition, we have a wonderful collection on Florida history that's of strong interest to a lot of us. And we have one of the three largest and best collections in the country supporting Latin American studies. We have a very large map library with over 500,000 maps, both ancient and modern. And it includes a lot of data and software to do geographical information systems so that we can plot geographic information against various locations and track information geographically as well as otherwise. I have one map here. It's the one that's pictured up there. This is actually a map from 1750. It's one of the, not our oldest map of Florida, but it's a very old map of Florida. And it was the first map to correctly show the Mississippi River dumping into the Gulf. And it was done by a French cartographer who was emphasizing the fact that the English were trapped on this side of the Appalachians and that the French were at that point claiming most of the middle of the country. But you'll see when you come up and look at it that there's beautiful detailed illustrations of deer and palm trees and Indians. These were all works of art. They were communicating information the way maps typically do, but they were also really intended to be artistic representations. You'll notice that this map is encapsulated, and I'll explain a little more about that as we go on. We also have an amazing manuscript collection, including manuscripts from Zora Neale Hurston and Marjorie, Kinnan, Rawlings, among other Florida authors. And we have papers from politicians such as Senator Smathers and Senator Graham. And I could go on. That's just a little bit of information about our special collections. In addition, we have digitized over 4 million pages of documents from these unique collections and put them up online, available over the internet, so that they're accessible to everyone. So it's a way of sharing these collections and making them more broadly accessible. We now have the capability to digitize about 2 million pages a year, and then we're expanding that by using outside service bureaus to increase that capacity. We also have developed the capacity to digitize objects. I don't know how many of you might have gone to the Harn last year when they had the African bead exhibit, but we were able to take the headdress that they had and do a 360 rotation digitization, so you can still pull it up on the internet from either our site or the Harn, and slowly rotate it, and you can zoom in, and you can actually see very, very fine detailing of the beadwork that you would really not be able to see with the naked eye. So it's a wonderful way not just to capture text, but to capture and share objects. With all of that and the digitization and the fact that it's 24/7 access and you don't have to come to the library to get it, people still really like to see the real thing and to hold it in their hands. So at this university, we have a very, I think, not totally unique, but a relatively unique view of special collections. I've visited universities where special collections are so special that things are locked in vaults and very few people ever see them. And when they do, it's under dim light and white gloves. We believe that we're acquiring these materials for active use by scholars and by others. So we have a very active preservation department that assists us in extending the life of these materials and making it safe for people to handle them. And that's why I mentioned earlier that if you come up later and look at this map, you'll see that it's been encapsulated. So it's fully enclosed. The descriptive information is attached so that you know what it is you're looking at. But as a result, it's something that can be passed around. It can be used, and we're not overly worried about its deteriorating in its use. One, I mentioned earlier that we have the Marjorie, Kinnan, Rawlings collection. This, I think, is one of our most interesting items. the story Jacob's Ladder was only the second story that she ever had published, and I have here the volume in which her two first stories were published. They were both published in Scribner's magazine, one in February and one in April of 1931. So here's the brief description that introduces the story Jacob's Ladder. One of the real finds of the whole $5,000 prize novel competition, $5,000 prize novel competition, Jacob's Ladder, is the poignant and simple story of two young Florida swamp dwellers, done in a style which is warm and full of emotion. Mrs. Rawlings' Cracker Children's in the February Scribner's is her only other published work. This short novel confirms the promise shown in that work and brings upon the literary scene a new writer. And so here's the printed version. It takes 14 pages in the magazine. And here is her manuscript. She was very poor. She was a starving artist. And she would buy rolls of paper, and she would feed them into her manual typewriter. And in this instance, she typed the story, got to where she thought she was halfway through, ripped off the paper, flipped it over, and typed on the back. So normally something like this, with this quality of paper, which could be very brittle and which could be damaged by undue light or those kinds of things, would be locked up in a vault. But our preservation people found out a way to take a 14-foot manuscript, which we needed to be able to view from both sides, and to encapsulate it so that it's safe for people to use it, so that it doesn't have to be treated as a treasure that is so rare that no one can handle it and no one can really look at it. And this is, I think, a very important part of what our preservation department does, is to take these treasures and make sure that they're preserved for future generations, but also to make sure that they're preserved in a way that lets us use them. Flo Turcott, who manages the Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings collection, is here tonight to supervise me to be sure that I don't lose her precious treasure. But in fact, it's an amazing capability that we have to obtain rare materials like that and then to make them available to scholars so that they can really understand not just what the printed word turned out to be for this story, but something more about the author. And if you look at this picture, which is taken from an exhibit that Flo set up last year about Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, you can see that we own her original typewriter. She was a great smoker, and so they have photographs of her sitting at the typewriter on her front porch, smoking and typing, and you can get a sense there of the scale of the manuscript, but you're welcome to come up afterwards and take a look at it in person. I think it's one of the really exciting things that we do is to take these treasures and make them accessible by digitization and by preservation. Every year we go through the university archives and we select vintage football programs, and we do keep all of those as well, and I brought a few samples with me here, which are again protected in plastic sleeves so that they'll be preserved, but which can be used. And then we work to get them turned into calendars, which are sold in the bookstore and in other places, to kind of represent some of the history of the university and to share some of these treasures that are otherwise not used as actively anymore. Our Associate Dean for Development couldn't be here tonight, but he likes to say that nobody graduated from the library, but nobody graduates without the library, which I think is a very wise sort of saying when you think about it. Although sometimes you will hear students say they graduated without ever visiting the library, but they certainly never graduated without using the library materials. We don't have our own alumni as part of the library, but the libraries support every college, and we hope that all of our alumni, faculty, and staff, and in fact the entire Gator Nation, support the libraries. There are many ways, large and small, to help. One popular program is called the Books of Honor, and I've left some folders about it on your table. What happens is that if you purchase a book plate, like the one that's shown on the screen, is put in the book indicating who the book is honoring or the event that the book is honoring. And then there is also a virtual book plate in the online catalog. So if you search by the donor's name or by the recipient's name in the catalog, you will find all of the books that have been donated in honor of that individual or paid for by a specific endowment. It's a really nice way to recognize a graduation or a birthday or to remember someone who has died. So we think it's been a program that's been very helpful. Dean Silver in the College of Design, Construction, and Planning is actually using it to honor alumni who receive awards for various things and to recognize them in that way by building the library collection but acknowledging them through Books of Honor. I hope you will visit the libraries often. We certainly